Hey there drone fans, Rick here again from Drone Valley. Today's video is going to be a lot different than the clips I normally post on the channel, where maybe I'm excited about some new technology or I'm talking about a new product that I've been using for a little while that I think you'll find interesting. I promise I'm going to get back to those videos really soon, but in a lot of ways today's video could be the most important video that I post this year because I'm going to try and answer the question, what's going on with DJI in the United States? Now, I've gotten that question from so many people over the last couple of weeks through email and voicemails and postings on YouTube. And I was going to wait a little bit before I put this clip together, but honestly, there's so much confusion out there about why you can't find DJI products in the US that I thought I'd sit down and try and explain some of the reasons behind it. Now, you can find DJI gear everywhere else in the world except the US right now. And if you've gone to their website or you've gone to Amazon or any major retailer, you're not going to find DJI gear available. So if you're trying to find a brand new Mavic 4 Pro, good luck trying to find one in the US. The same with the brand new Osmo 360. It's not available here, yet it's available everywhere else in the world. So what is it about the US that's causing that problem? Well, again, a lot of people are confused thinking it's the tariffs. They're thinking, okay, the tariffs are up in the air. Maybe the Chinese are looking at that thinking, let it settle down before we start releasing products in the US, because that's certainly going to raise the price of the product. It's not the tariffs, I can promise you that. DJI wants to sell into the US. Other people think it's the political climate. Maybe, we're not happy with the Chinese right now, they're not happy with us. Maybe they're saying, oh, the heck with the US for a while, we'll sell our gear somewhere else in the world. It's not the political climate. They want to sell gear in the US. Matter of fact, the US makes up 35% of their worldwide market, and we have some of the most high-tech nerds on the planet here that buy their gear the minute it's released. So they want to sell into the US. So it's neither of those. So why is it that DJI gear is sold everywhere else in the world except the good old US of A? It has to do with politics, and not politics in general, dirty, underhanded, protectionism politics. And I'm laughing because it's right in front of us. I don't know how we're missing it. So you have to go back a little bit. And there's been a bunch of reasons that people have floated for why DJI isn't being sold in the US or why there should be bans or restrictions on it. And it goes way back to 6 or 7 years ago where this conversation started somehow that DJI was spying on the US through drones, that somehow consumer drones that were flying over a park or over the lake or over the ocean were gathering useful information for the bad guys in China that they could use to surveil the US, which I called out as pure nonsense back then. And again, I'm an engineer, right? So I study this technology down to the bit level. And I thought to myself, if I'm trying to gather information on a foreign country, is a drone the best way to do that? Well, let me think a second. I've got Google Earth. I've got people, millions of people walking around with cell phones, taking selfies and vacation photos and other stuff in high resolution. I've got other ways to collect that data. So a drone randomly flying around, maybe capturing some video footage of an area, really doesn't give me much. And then even if I captured good information, how do I get that information back to my country? How do I parse through that information to find the stuff that I care about? All of that meant it isn't really a possibility. But I thought, let me ask DJI. So it's no secret that I work with them occasionally and I'm pretty close to some of their engineering teams. I said to them, look, you guys are getting a lot of grief over this DJI spying for China nonsense. Why don't you commission a study? Get somebody outside to look at your gear. And they'd already done that. So to my surprise, they'd commissioned a study. They brought an independent company in, said, go to a store, buy 2 of our drones, we'll reimburse you for them, and just run them through your rigorous testing to find out if there's any way that data is being leaked to somebody else. So they spent a couple of weeks testing the gear. They produced a report that was like 96 pages. And I said, well, can I get the report? So I read through the report. There wasn't a single thing in there that had to do with DJI, their ecosystem, their software, their drones, their capture technology, that posed any kind of risk outside of that ecosystem. Matter of fact, the only thing they found that was a real problem was part of the Android operating system, which is the core of what you're using for the application. Nothing to do with DJI, having to do with the Android system. So I thought, okay, well that proves it to me. DJI went a step further at that point and they said, you know what? We're gonna offer offline mode, which means you're never gonna touch a server anywhere, you own your data. And we're gonna come out with a governed edition of the software that encrypts that with an AES-256 key, which means it's almost unhackable. So not only do you own your data, it's not touching a server, but it's encrypted. So you could not take that step any further with protecting that data. By the way, no other drone company on the planet's doing any of that, right? And then on top of that, DJI introduced geofencing. And I know a lot of people don't like it because it restricts where you can fly, but the point with geofencing was it restricted the drone from flying into areas you shouldn't be flying in because there are no-fly zones. So nuclear power plants, police stations, government agencies, things that you shouldn't be flying over, the drone would get to that area and stop. It wouldn't fly over that location. So even if there was a way for the bad guys to get the data, they couldn't really get any useful information on the areas they care most about. So the whole thing to me was a bunch of hooey, and I did a few clips on it explaining why that was nonsense. So that kind of went away for a while. Well, the truth is there are companies that compete with DJI. Skydio is one of them. There's a few other commercial companies that are out there. And the problem is DJI has been developing drone technology, stabilized gimbals, transmission technologies for decades. And I talk about them a lot in a very flattering way. I think they're a brilliant company. I think their engineers are way ahead of the curve in developing all those technologies. So what you find in a drone like this from DJI, which is their Mini 4 Pro, is a consumer device that is so far ahead of the curve as far as development goes, that if I'm starting a drone company, it's really difficult for me to catch up, especially to make a drone like this with the functionality this has at the price point this retails for. So if I'm competing with you and you're DJI, how do I get a leg up? I prevent you from marketing your drone in my market. So if I'm trying to market a drone to the government or the military or police departments, I've got to stop you from selling a drone like this or a drone like this. How do I do that? I start talking about the Chinese government is spying on the US. There's things going on there where they're surveilling it. They can take control of it tomorrow. So a bunch of politicians got involved. Those companies hired lobbyists where they threw a lot of money at a lobbying company to talk to the politicians, several of them. Elaine Stefanik is one of them. There's a few other out of Florida that are influenced by those outside agencies that I'm sure contribute to their campaigns and help them get elected. So now they're beholden to those outside consulting companies, and they've got to push bills forward talking about DJI being a threat to US security. Now, it is curious to me that the vast majority of drones are manufactured in China, or if they're not manufactured in China and assembled in the US, components come from China. So it's not like this is that unique. All the other drone companies, I'm gonna call them out, Autel, 99% of the companies you can buy a drone today on Amazon from are built in China. Not to mention your cell phone's built in China. The surveillance cameras on your home are built in China. The computer you're using every day is built in China, with a webcam on it probably. So there are so many different portals out there that aren't being affected by this. Why do you zero DJI out? You're not zeroing in on Autel, you're not zeroing in on other companies. You're picking on DJI because they own 50 to 70% of the market in consumer drones in the States. They build a product like this that's reasonably priced, that has incredibly advanced features that a police department, a ranger out there on a government park can use, or a rescue team can use for very little money. So it's budget friendly and it works. So these other companies have put together a campaign to paint DJI as the bad guy. Now, one other point I'll bring up here is, if it really was a security threat, let's just say that I'm missing a whole lot, and this has some whiz-bang technology that can gather data, send it over to the bad guys. Do you think we're the only civilized organization on the planet, our country, that would notice that? We talk to our allies all the time. We talk to Europe, we talk to the UK, we talk to France, we talk to other countries, Ireland, all of our friends out there. Don't you think we'd be talking to them going, hey, bad news. This DJI stuff is really scary because they're collecting data on us. You guys ought to know about that and you ought to ban them. There isn't another country out there that's doing that. You can buy these drones anywhere on the planet except right here in the good old US of A, and it has nothing to do with security. Every report that's come out has vindicated DJI as being a secure ecosystem. And all the rumors out there about them spying on the US and defense departments has information about it, release it. If it's classified, find the parts that you can release and release it. There hasn't been one single report that's come out of the government that's pointed to a specific technology in these drones that creates a security risk. So there's a lot of smoke being blown here, and it all comes down to pure protectionism. What you've got is a political situation that, because of those lobbyists and because of the money being thrown at them from commercial drone operators, they're restricting the market to the Blue UAS, which is the certification that they're putting drone companies through, which again is a farce because DJI would pass through it immediately. But they're holding their feet to the fire saying these companies can be sold to Defense Department contracts and other security like police and fire and rescue, but DJI can't. And it has nothing to do with the technology, everything to do with protectionism. So at the end of the day, what frustrates me most about it is, number one, I can't get my hands on DJI gear, which I think is some of the best quality technology, whether it's a stabilized gimbal like this, or it's the drone, or it's the wireless microphone. All of it is incredibly cool technology. I can't buy it. I can't find it in the States, all because commercial drone companies don't want DJI to compete in that market because they want to be able to sell a drone in most cases that doesn't have the features that the DJI gear has and is 5 or 10 or 20 times the price. So in a lot of ways, it's bad all the way around. And the reason I get frustrated about the ban in general, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that are coming up, is because if you're a park ranger and you're out there trying to find a kid who's lost in the woods, having a tool like this in your bag that you can put up and you can search miles and miles of area, and you won't have to go down there in the bramble and worry about hurting yourself or getting a snake bite, and you can cover much more area. Or if somebody's lost at sea and a pilot can put a drone up off a boat and scan water and find that person that's out there and maybe even drop a preserver to them to save a life, why wouldn't you be a fan of that? Why would you restrict that? All right, so here are two things you need to be aware of. The first one has to do with what's called the NDAA. It's the National Defense Authorization Act, which was passed a couple of months back. In there, there's a provision of it that requires DJI to get certified by December 23rd, or they'll be banned from importing into the States, period. That's it. It ends. Now, what's interesting about that is in that, they don't specify an organization that can do that certification. They just said you have to be certified. So DJI for the last 6 months or a year have been searching for an organization that the government would find credible that they could get certified by. Now imagine the work involved with that. First they have to talk to the agencies that are going to approve that, find a company, then get certified. They've been scrambling to do that. If they're not certified by December 23rd, it's over. The other thing that's interesting is that the provision doesn't prevent the import of the goods. It basically prevents the FCC from certifying any new DJI gear. So if you're flying a DJI product today and we lose the ability to buy new DJI gear in December, you can still use the gear you've got because it's not retroactive. That may change, but today it's not retroactive. It only affects newer gear. But the other issue that's affecting us right now, and the reason you can't find a Mavic 4 Pro or you can't find the brand new Insta360 is because Customs has gotten involved and somehow people have thought about DJI as this bad company that's providing surveillance equipment to the Chinese government, that's doing all kinds of unsavory things with people in different regions in their country. And I look at that and think to myself, I'm not going to say for a minute that the Chinese government, just like our government, just like the government of Ukraine and Russia and other countries, aren't misusing drones for things that they weren't really designed to do. Just like you can't ban baseball bats because some knucklehead takes a baseball bat into a building and starts smacking people with it. It isn't the bat that's the problem, it's the knucklehead that's the problem. It's the same with drones. So if this drone is used for good purposes, for me, putting it up as a consumer, flying it around, getting some beautiful footage of my vacation or my family, you can't blame the company that makes the drone for what people do with the drone. So even if they are being used for that type of activity, it's not up to DJI to police that. You know, they put those geofencing zones out there to protect people from flying drones into protected areas. I guess they could put a geofence up around specific areas, but it's not really their job to do that. It's the consumer's job to be responsible with the tool. So right now the import problems are around that security risk, which somehow got DJI added to this bad list of people based on, you know, mistreating people out there in the field. Now, I could spend an hour talking about how we turn a blind eye to what's going on in Gaza or what's going on in Ukraine or what's going on in South Africa. We tend to look at stuff that is interesting and stuff that you don't want to look at, we don't look at. So we are really duplicitous in that way, but all of it comes back to the fact that there are a group of commercial drone companies that have gotten a group of aggressive consultants and lobbyists talking to vulnerable politicians that are willing to talk to them, that are buying what they're selling, even though it's pure nonsense based on technology. By the way, none of those politicians really understand the tech, but they're listening to the lobbyists and they're putting bills forward to affect DJI's ability to sell into the United States purely because of protectionism, because they want to restrict that market to the commercial operators that'll have free run in that space if DJI is eliminated, which again, they'll sell drones that aren't nearly as competent, that are 5, 10, 20 times the price, which means it's costing more as a consumer through taxes to fund those efforts. So I don't want that to happen. I want it to be very frugal. But in addition to that, I don't like that kind of unfair competition. As an American, I believe in freedom. I believe in the ability for the person that builds the best mousetrap to be able to sell that mousetrap to as many people as possible. And if you build a better one, you're going to get the market share. It shouldn't be because I banned your mousetrap in the United States and my mousetrap wins and I can charge 5 times the price. So anyway, that's my rant for today. I just wanted to make sure you understood the reasons behind it. It really has nothing to do with the tariffs, very little to do with the political climate, and everything to do with dirty politics. So what can you do to help here? Well, you can get a hold of your congressperson, the Senate, you can talk to your local politicians, find somebody who's interested in this issue, and have them speak up when these bills come up and the restrictions around it, because otherwise, come December 23rd, you'll be able to fly your Mini 4 Pro. You won't be able to buy the Mini 5 Pro if there's one coming, or any new DJI gear after December 23rd. And I think that's an unsavory situation. I think in a lot of ways, we should be so disappointed in our elected officials. I know everybody says that in general, but for this specific, did you see that bird fly by? In this specific situation, shame on all of us for letting this happen. Really, shame on all of us, because that's not the way America should be run. That's just my 2 cents. Anyway, that's all I have for today. If you have comments, put them in the comments below. I'll respond, I'll answer questions if I can. Please don't flame me. I don't want to make this about politics. I just want to fly my drone and give a company a fair shot at the US market. And that's pretty much it for today. So thanks for listening to my rant. Hopefully you're having a good summer and you're flying your drones today, enjoying this beautiful weather. I promise I'll get back to the normal clips really soon. Anyway, until next time, as always, fly your drone and happy flying.